This break is brought to you by Netflix. Head on over to netflix.com/GameBreakerTV to sign up for a free 30-day trial. It's a dilemma that every MMO faces. How many servers do you decide to launch with? Too few, and people can't play. Too many, and you've got a server merge later. With me to talk a little bit about this issue and break it down for you guys is GameBreaker writer Jason Winner. Now, Jason, it just basically boils down to when you'd rather have bad publicity, at launch or later, correct?
Yeah, it does pretty much seem that way. I mean, because, if you have a lot of servers at launch and you wind up, having your player base decline a bit, then you have to merge later, and that sucks. But if you don't have enough servers at launch, people can't get into the game, or they have really long queues, and that sucks. So ideally, you want to launch with a decent amount and then grow the game, but that just doesn't happen very often these days. It seems like more often than not, you get the big surge at the beginning, and then it kind of drops off afterwards, sometimes really far. And the thing is, that's not what anybody wants to hear, especially the suits. They don't want to hear that your game is as popular as it's ever going to be on day one, and then it's all downhill from there. But that's just more and more the reality these days.
But what about the fact that Diablo 3 had such an infamous launch problem with not having enough servers to base off their expectations of what the game launched? And over the course of time, people have kind of forgotten about the infamous Error 37, and there are other issues that people have with the real money auction house and other things going on within the game, but it almost seems like Diablo could have been better well served for just having a launch problem rather than, oh my gosh, we're dealing with server mergers and layoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And Diablo, of course, the issue with that is the notion that it was a single-player game. You had to be online to play, so that certainly fueled the fire of the Error 37s and not being able to play more so than it might normally have done.
Now, is that kind of just it all here? Is that developers are overconfident about how their games are going to sell and kind of dooms them to make the wrong decision from the get-go?
Yeah, there's definitely some of that. I mean, they think that if they have busy or nearly full servers at launch, hey, we'll maintain that forever, right? Or we'll add, or we'll grow and we'll add, and so on. Like you said, if you could see the graph, it would be some huge number right at the beginning, and then usually it's going to drop off a little or maybe a lot over the next week or so, and then hopefully, if an ideal situation, it starts ramping back up at a pace you can handle. And ideally, you'd have the servers to handle that load of the lower number, which you can then maintain in the long term and then slowly add as you go along. I kind of think of it as, this is what I always think of whenever I think about this. There was a new mall that opened up once near where I lived. And I went there like the first weekend it was open. You could not find a parking space. But then I go to that same mall, a few months later on a weekend or maybe on a weekday, and half the parking spaces are empty. And I think, well, gee, what a waste. They have all this space they're not doing anything with. But they kind of had. It wasn't the case when it first started up. They didn't have enough space to hold everybody, and I don't know what the solution is there. Do you turn people away when you start up, or do you go the other way?
Is the bar just set so high because of World of Warcraft that people are expecting these exponential numbers and to hit these astronomical peaks that they really can only hit for the first few months of launch? Or should their approach kind of be to expect a steady growth over the course of 5-6 months to a year and start out small?
Well, a lot of it has to do with a lot of the hype that you have with a lot of games. I mean, taking Old Republic as an example, that people were looking forward to that for like 4 years, and when you're looking forward to it for 4 years, you're going to get right in the instant it becomes available, and you're just all over it. So maybe games that aren't hyped it's something we talked about in other things as well. If you can maybe tone down the hype a little bit, you'll have less of that issue when you launch, and then you can steadily grow. But of course, people want it to be as big as possible, as soon as possible, to repay the millions and millions of dollars that have been invested into it. So,
but isn't that dangerous?
Again, a tough thing to justify.
Isn't that like you were saying? That seems so dangerous to get something so overhyped and to get everybody on board from day one. Everybody who's ever going to try the game is going to try it within your first month. And then you're only going to go downhill from there, and you're going to get people playing the game who maybe didn't necessarily feel that it was for them or wasn't necessarily what they were hoping it to be. Whereas instead, if you kind of try and target a smaller number and grow from there, it seems just like a better approach to take and deal with all of the damage that comes up front with maybe not having enough servers to supply for the demand.
But then you can run along the other side of that, which is you're not putting out enough information, and people are interested in the game, but they're not hearing enough about it, so it's not in the public eye. And then again, somebody in the company says, "Well, we need more publicity. We need more headlines on Game Breaker TV." I'm sure that comes up all the time. And all these companies, they want to be here on our site, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough line. How much do you hype it? And how much do you try to get that kind of people jammed into the server on day one, as opposed to trying for the smaller, easier, or not easier, but the, I guess, less stressful approach of starting off slow and kind of building your way up. That's what the guys with Wizard 101, they told me about how they did that at King's Isle, how they really did kind of a soft launch for Wizard 101, and they've been ramping up pretty steadily ever since. They're trying to do the same thing now with their second game, which is a little harder considering that they're a well-known company. But they seem to be coming along okay. It's not getting a ton of publicity, which, again, some people would look at that and say, why aren't we getting a ton of publicity? Why aren't we all over everything? But maybe it's not the best thing.
Which approach to you seems worse? Is it better to deal with the long queue system at games launch, or to kind of deal with low population servers for the first few months?
Hard as it is for people to handle, especially when they've been expecting something for so long, I'm really thinking that the logjam at the beginning is preferable. It's like you were saying that we don't really talk about the error 37 so much anymore. And if it had been an MMO where for the first 3-4 days you just couldn't get in or had a lot of problems getting in, we'd all be ticked off about it. We'd all rage and vent on the forums, and by now we would have forgotten about it though. I mean, maybe the best idea is to just go with that and take your lumps early and realize that over the long term you're going to be better off. I mean, the notion of launch has to be perfect and we have to have as much as we can right out of the gate, and we'll worry about what happens when a few months later. Maybe that's not the best mentality. Maybe that's more of like a video game mentality. When you launch a standalone PC or console game, and then you're going to pretty much forget about marketing it or whatever, a few weeks later. But maybe that just doesn't work for the MMO market.
Sure. Well, guys, we're going to throw it out to you. Let us know what you guys think. Would you rather deal with a big kind of gate at launch day where you can't necessarily jump in and pay the game that you paid for outright, or deal with the bad publicity a couple months down the road when and if they feel it's need to close down some of the servers? Let us know in the comments below, as well as for all of your weekly MMO news. Be sure to catch This Week in MMO every Wednesday. Actually, Friday. We've actually changed times to Friday, 6 p.m. PDT. So guys, keep it tuned right here to Game Breaker TV for all your video game related news. Jason, thank you so much for the information. We'll see you guys next time.